Now, what I'd like to focus on is the obligation to build the menorah in the Mishkan. Just to remind ourselves, what's the menorah? The menorah is uh, the seven branches of gold, and that the oil was lit in them, and this is called the menorah. Now, this menorah is described in chapter 25, beginning with verse 31. If you have a hard time understanding it, don't feel so bad, because Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, also had a hard time understanding it. And Moshe Rabbeinu had such a difficulty understanding it that he wasn't able to build it. The Rashi quotes that it says Moshe was having such a difficulty building it. So Hashem said to him, just throw it into the fire. Or take a big chunk of gold and throw it into the fire. It will be made by its own. And that's why it said, Vasita menorat zav taor miksha te'aseh menorah. The menorah will be made. You cannot make it, it will be made, because Moshe himself couldn't figure out exactly how to make it. What was so complicated? And by the way, that reminds us, of course, of the scene of the golden calf, where Aaron takes the gold and throws it into the calf itself, and throws it into the fire. And as a result of throwing it to the fire, out pops the golden calf. And here we have the opposite, that this is what Moshe Rabbeinu did with the menorah, that he threw the gold in and out came the menorah. So what was so hard about the menorah that Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't figure it out? What is some of the symbolism about the menorah? So let's just first review it. It says, "You shall make the menorah out of pure gold. Beaten shall the menorah be." What does it mean, beaten? It means that all that Betzalel, or however it was made, this is the command. It was made from the fire, but the command was that it had to come from one single piece. It couldn't be different pieces of gold that were soldered together. Rashi tells us that to come from one specific piece of gold that was chiseled out, and that's how it was made. And it had on the menorah, it had branches and goblets and knobs and flowers. 6 branches and 1 central pillar. And in the menorah there were 4 goblets, and they were decorated. And there is actually in the menorah one of the 5 verses in the Torah, which Rashi says we don't know how to read. That the Gemara in Yoma says that there are 5 verses in the Torah where we're not sure where to put the punctuation, and one of them is even in the menorah itself. And that's possibly part of the reason why Moshe didn't understand, because it says in the menorah there are 4 goblets that were decorated, knobs and flowers. So we're not sure if the goblets are decorated or if the knobs and the flowers are decorated. And then it says, you shall make the lamps that are 7, and then you shall kindle its lamps, and it will cast light in the direction of its face. What does that mean? So what does that mean, in the direction of its face? So again, we'll look at Rashi before going to the other commentaries. So Rashi tells us here, what does that mean? Make the mouths of the 6 lamps at the end of the branches which emerge from its side. They all have to turn towards the middle lamp. So the 6 lamps, according to this approach, are all facing towards the center. So when you light them, they all light up towards the center face. And so basically, that's the body of the menorah. And that's one approach of how the lamps were faced. They were all faced towards the center menorah. And then also the instruments for the menorah, were made out of gold. The tongs, the scoops were pure gold. And then the last verse says, see and construct according to the form that you're shown on the mountain. So what does that mean? It means that Moshe, Rashi tells us a second time, Moshe had a great difficulty building the menorah until Hashem showed him a menorah shel eish. Hashem showed Moshe in the heavens a menorah of fire. Moshe saw a menorah of fire. What does that mean? Moshe looked up to the sky and saw the menorah of fire. So this is the symbolism of the menorah, and we have to try and understand its symbolism. So the first thing I wanted to look at, if we have here, is the position of Rabbi Soloveitchik, who says something beautiful here. I saw the commentary of Rabbi Soloveitchik. We'll look at Rabbi Soloveitchik, and then afterwards, after we look at Rabbi Soloveitchik, we'll look at the Baal HaTurim, and then Rabbi Saul Stern. So it says, "Now see and make according to their pattern which you are shown on the mountain." Rashi quotes the Talmud because it doesn't say anywhere else, see and make it according to the pattern that you're shown. Why did Moshe have such difficulty? What was the nature of Moshe's difficulty? So listen to this powerful explanation of Rabbi Soloveitchik. The Mishkan, the sanctuary, had two criteria. It had to include precise measurements from an architectural standpoint. So it had to be precise. It also had to be an inspiring and impressive structure. So it had to be exact, but also had to be evocative. It had to be evocative. Hashem wanted Moshe to build a Mishkan because he wanted a home. He wanted people to appreciate the sanctuary's mysterious, ethereal quality in addition to its architecture. Hashem wanted a Mishkan that would attract and inspire the Jewish people. This couldn't be accomplished just by architecture. It had to radiate an aura of inspiration. And this is the part that I found very moving. The menorah was not a mere combination of oil, knobs, and other decorations. Embedded in the menorah was the spark of the godly personality. Wow. Embedded in the menorah was the spark of the godly personality and of the Shekhinah. The menorah contained the spark of the divine. It says in chapter 27, verse 20, it says, it says right here, it says, V'ata titzaveh es b'nei Yisrael v'yikhu elecha shemen zayizach, pure olive oil, crushed, l'ma'or, for light, l'halot ner tamid, to bring up an eternal light. Until the light, Rashi says, you have to light the light of the menorah until the flame goes up on its own. So what does that mean? It's not just an oil-fueled light. It's the reflection of a transcendental world. So the light of the menorah had to contain the light of the divine. And it says at the beginning of Bereshit, Vayar Elokim et ha'or ki tov. God saw the light and it was good. Implies that light that was too good for sinful humanity to enjoy. So Moshe found this very difficult. Moshe was asking God, how can I convey the inner essence of the menorah to the people? He said, I can conduct the architecture, but how can I convey the personality of the divine personality that's supposed to be emanating from the Mishkan? I think what Rabbi Soloveitchik is pointing out is the feeling that we get from seeing art, a beautiful art, that we see something and we're overwhelmed by the beauty. We see the divine personality within it. Moshe says, I can make the menorah, but how do I make it sparkle? And it's not just enough just to put it on the paper. That's why Moshe had such difficulty with his. He was trying to transmit the beauty. And he's saying, you could give me the blueprints, but I also need insight in how to make it beautiful. We'll just pause here for a moment. The Baal HaTurim has some beautiful ideas about the menorah. He says, you shall make the menorah out of pure gold. He says, the word menorah, Sheva Pa'amim Kesiv Menorah. The word menorah is written in this passage 7 times. Let's count it. Menorah Tzav Tahor. The word menorah is mentioned 7 times, where it's twice in verse 31, and then twice in verse 32, and then in verse 33, verse 34, and in verse 35. So that's how we get 7 times the word menorah is mentioned. So what's the significance of that? This goes back to what Joyce was saying. Corresponding to the 7 heavens, Keneged Shiva Reki'im, Visheva Aratzos, and also the 7, corresponding to the 7 heavens, and also the 7 lands, telling us that the menorah is like this bridge, meaning to say that we're bringing down the heavens. We have this idea of the light standing in for the light of the heavens. A very powerful idea. Very, very powerful idea. So what does that mean? The Talmud tells us that there are 7 heavens, and each is a higher level than the preceding one. What are the 7 heavens that the Talmud tells us? The 7 heavens are as follows. The first is the vilon, the curtain, and that's, I guess, the lowest level. And nothing happens within the 7, but in the morning it withdraws like a curtain, allowing the daylight to shine through. And in the evening it goes forth, preventing the light from the sun from reaching the earth. And so it renews its work each day. The second is the firmament, and that's where the sun, the moon, and the stars are. The third is the shechakim, the powders or pulverizers. And that's where the manna that grind, the millstones that grind the manna. The fourth is the vul. That's the heavenly Jerusalem, the heavenly temple, and the altar. And that's where the angel Michael brings offerings. The fifth heaven is the ma'on, the dwelling, in which the angels sing songs of praise to God through the night, but remain silent by day in deference to Israel. The sixth is the machon, the foundation. That's where there are storehouses of snow and hail, the attics in which harmful dew and heavy rainfall are stormed, and the chamber of whirlwind, and the grotto of smoke with its doors of fire for retribution against the wicked. And then the 7th heaven is the willows or darkenings or mixtures, and that's where righteousness, justice, and charity and cachets of life, peace, and blessing, the souls of the righteous, the spirits and souls that are destined to be born, and the life-giving dew with which God will resurrect the dead, they're all in the 7 heavens. So the menorah relates to the 7 heavens. Okay, that's mystical, spiritual. You have to go through that slowly to understand what it's saying, but it's all there. Now there are 7 earths. There are 7 earths which correspond to the 7 heavens. What's that about? So God calls the earth by 7 names: Eretz, land; Adama, Arka, Charava, Yabasha, Tevel. Doesn't tell us the significance of the 7 names of the earth, but just that every aspect on the earth corresponds to a supernatural aspect. That's the first thing that I wanted to share with you from the Baal HaTurim. And there's one other thing I wanted to share with you from the Baal HaTurim, and that is following. It says, Ein beparashat menorah os samach. That every letter within these verses about the menorah, every letter is contained, with the exception of the letter samach. This goes back to what Joyce was saying also, except for another passage which this relates to is the creation, the birth of the world, the creation of the world. And that's to tell us that where there is light, there is no Satan and no harmful forces. can have any influence. Where the lights of the menorah are burning, there can be no Satan and no harmful forces. That the Samach represents the Satan. And in the merit of Ner Mitzvah, the Torah, or in the merit of the light of a mitzvah and the light of Torah, God's commandment is a lamp and the Torah is light, that closes the mouth of the Satan, Satan, and prevents him from doing his damage. Of course, everyone asks in this Balaturim, the Samach is not how you spell Satan. Satan is spelled with a sin. So the commentary on it explains that the sin and the Samach, because they have the same pronunciation, are used interchangeably. And so therefore it's an acceptable variant. So the account of the creation story does not have a Samach, which does not appear in the entire first chapter of the book of Bereshit. It only appears in chapter 2, verse 11. It does not appear in chapter 1. And the Talmud states that the presence of the menorah, of the light, pushes away the Satan. Of course, this is symbolic. One of the first words that God said, let there be light. So light in the world, positivity, is what is necessary for us to make a better world. And Satan, to me, represents darkness, somebody who is not positive. It represents darkness, bringing pessimism, cynicism to the world. And our job as Torah Jews is to bring forth the light. And this is from the Balaturim. And now I wanted to share some beautiful midrashim that I saw in the menorah, which were collected by Rav Betzalel Stern. And he writes as follows. He says as follows. This is also corresponding to what Joyce was saying before. That Joyce was saying that what did the menorah represent? It says the 7 lamps of the menorah correspond to the 7 words in the first verse in the book of Bereshit. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. The 11 kaftorim, the knobs, correspond to the 11 words in the verse Eile Shemot, the second book of the Torah. The 9 flowers correspond to the 9 words in the first verse of Vayikra. Vayikra al Moshe vaydaber Hashem elav me'ol moed le'mor. The height of the menorah is 18 tefachim, corresponding to the first verse of the book of Bamidbar, which is 18 words. Wait. Hold on, let me just see if that's correct. Hold on. I don't know if that's correct. Let me count that. Yeah. Yep, there's 18. And then the 22 Gviyim correspond to the first verse in the words Eila Hadvarim. So these aspects of the menorah correspond to all these different books of the Torah. And that's to tell us that the menorah is the Torah. The menorah is the Torah. Because the lamp is a mitzvah, the commandment is a lamp, and the Torah is the light. And if you will count the menorah, the numerical value of the word menorah is 607. And the letters of the menorah are 4. So that gets us to 611. And that is like the number of the Torah. So the menorah represents the Torah. The menorah represents Torah. This is to me so beautiful. And now, if everybody comes to our yeshiva this afternoon when we dedicate the menorah, you'll see that when we dedicate the Aron of the yeshiva, you'll see that the image that we selected for the Aron Kodesh is the image of a menorah. Image of a menorah. Anyway, so let's stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address.